Hello all you beautiful people. Have you ever thought you've been having too much fun with Terraria? Have you ever thought, wow, I wish I could make this game a tedious, death-ridden, luck-based playthrough with the best strategy for every boss fight is a prayer? Well, I have. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as I tell you all the story of how I beat Terraria with enemies raining from the sky. Normally I like to begin these videos by explaining the rules or concept of the challenge at hand, but this time around I think it's quite self-explanatory. Enemies will continuously fall from the sky, with the types of enemies that can fall getting stronger every time you progress. This will continue until the death of Plantera, which will open Pandora's box, allowing anything to spawn, but luckily that won't be for a while. Beginning the challenge and being immediately dive bombed by a shark, I didn't think that it would be too difficult. I mean, most of the enemies I could spawn at this point were just miscellaneous aquatic life and slimes. Without even giving the enemies a chance, I headed straight for the nearest cave where I learned that the enemy ring did indefectible underground, so I spent enough time in the caverns to develop a severe vitamin D deficiency, but gathering a ton of ore in the process. After accidentally drinking a gravitation potion, I returned to the surface just in time for the moon to turn red, summoning the hordes of those I've previously wronged as I ascended to the heavens. While up there I found a grand total of one singular sky island, which contained a shiny red balloon before meeting the ground at a speed high enough to send me to the future. With the first of what I can say is many fall damage deaths out of the way, I once again went caving to avoid the blood moon and its insane amount of enemies, but after reaching hell, I made the non-influenced decision to return to the surface. This turned out to be a bit of a mistake though, as I immediately got pelted by bats, slimes, and all sorts of other horrific creatures. As most rational people probably would, I tried to run away from my problems, but tripped and fell into a spiked jungle slime, sending me right back to the shark exhibit that was the spawn of my world. I say my world, but I'm pretty sure I'm in theirs by this point. I dug deep into the floor, and by deep I mean about 2 inches down, and began constructing a fortress, safe from all the rabid fans that so desperately wanted an autograph. I tried to go to the surface to finish the base, but yeah, no, just restart the world, I need these guys gone. With the house finally finished and another bloodwind plaguing my world, I made a full set of silver armor, a gold pickaxe, and an emerald grappling hook, setting me up perfectly to start progressing. After smashing 2 hearts of a dead god with a wooden hammer, I finished exploring the jungle, securing myself a mini shark in memory of all the sharks that had died throughout the past hour. With a solid selection of weapons and some good equipment, I could finally hold my own against the enemy rain, so I took the fighting chance I had and built a small arena above the bunker and summoned the Eye of Cthulhu. I could lie and say that the fight was even remotely challenging, but I loaded the eye with bullets and thorns within a minute. I felt like I could do anything, and my fight against the brain of Cthulhu just a few minutes later proved that I could, as I turned it into 1,000 little bits of gore on the sidewalk the citizens of New York would probably walk over. There was no doubt about it. I had discovered the part of fight back against any opponent that challenged me. Oh, right, no, yeah, the Rin develops every time I progress. I forgot about that one. Today's forecast was largely made up of every type of hornet, skeleton, and demon, so if I were to go to the surface with the silver armor I currently had, I'd probably be forgotten by all living creatures within a day. My name remaining is nothing but a whisper in the wind. To fix this, I went to hell and stayed there where I probably belonged considering how many innocent sea creatures I'd killed by this point, until I had enough hellstone to make a full set of armor and weapons. While getting the obsidian to craft the hellstone bars however, I noticed that the small bit of lava created by the leakage of a lava slime was doing a fine job at killing anything that fell into the puddle. Realizing how powerful that was, I dug 2 small trenches around the bunker and filled them with lava. Maybe a little ugly, but it worked even better than I could have imagined, making soup of anything that dared try to attack me. Well, besides the demons, but yeah, that makes sense. I also dug out a few tunnels, allowing myself to collect the drops of the enemies that died from the lava, essentially creating the perfect mob farm. But feeling ready to progress again, I attempted to build an arena for Skeletron when I quickly realized just how annoying this playthrough was going to get. In my last playthrough, I made a point about how much I despise hornets, and this playthrough is only adding to that distaste. And need I mention that the fight went terribly? I got chased down by whatever this fish of Cthulhu is, and then immediately got killed by fall damage. Not my finest moment, far from it. After such an embarrassing death, I decided to get a life, which after the last playthrough felt incredible, but even that wasn't good enough to fight against Skeletron and the live audience of Hornets and Demon Eyes. The crowd was alright while fighting the Eye of Cthulhu, but the spectators had gotten a little too comfortable with heckling. Luckily, the Goblin army finally decided to invade, which might not have been the brightest move on their part considering that my house is located under a lava moat, but whatever, I had the Tinkerer now. With lightning boots, reforges, the horseshoe cloud in a balloon, a noodle imfriend, and a wider arena with more grapple points, I turned Skeletron into a fine powder which I consumed through methods that I will not be describing in detail before diving into the dungeon, which was miserable, by the way. The only items I wanted going into this place were the Muramasa, handgun, and Cobalt shield, but I only left with one of the 3 as the sword and gun were just nowhere to be found. I mean, I looked around for a while. I also killed the King Slime during this time, or, well, he more or less killed himself. The lava moat was surprisingly good against him. But as with most playthroughs, the Wall of Flesh was next after Skeletron, and as again with most playthroughs, the Hellwing Bow made an embarrassment of it. If this weapon is available to you in a playthrough, you should always use it against the wall. It is stupidly effective. I wasn't in danger once during this fight, but with the Wall of Flesh turned into a new accessory slot, we were now in hard mode, which is simply known around these parts as Hell Incarnate. Hardmode started off surprisingly well considering the challenge, with an ice mimic kindly donating a godly frost brand, a weapon I'd rarely used before, to my inventory. With it, I made a run for the Crimson, dodging the turtles and event enemies that kept changing the music every time they spawned. I'm not joking, by the end of this playthrough the Old One's army theme caused me to turn off the in-game music entirely. It's a fine song, but god, it just kept playing. Moving on from that though, I smashed a handful of Crimson altars while at the same time living the experience of what it's like to ask for directions in London. I got enough cobalt for a pickaxe before even returning home, and before long, after a battle against 2 wyverns and a hollowed mimic, I had a full set of titanium armor. I was also lucky enough to get an ice bow and a pair of ice wings that I got from an ice golem that just so happened to spawn on my lava moon. Hopefully my luck doesn't change for the worse. Things have been going pretty well considering the conditions of the run. Though before tackling the mechanical bosses, I wanted to get the Daedalus Stormbow, which if you know anything about Terraria, you've probably heard of how powerful it is. Unfortunately, just as I was preparing to summon the hollowed mimic, I received an angry DM on Twitter telling me that I was going to have a terrible night, and the twins jumped me while I had my back turned. I did nearly win the fight despite the surprise of it, but I got speared by 2 blood eels and finished off by spasmatism. But my luck did turn around to me getting the Daedalus Stormbow from the first hollowed mimic I spawned, setting the luck equilibrium back in balance. I'm sure there's only good things to come for me. With the Daedalus Stormbow and holy arrows in hand, the destroyer proved to be no threat whatsoever. The scariest part of that fight was knowing that I could end at any moment with a single blood eel, but besides that, it was smooth sailing. I summoned the twins for a rematch straight away to make use of my potion buffs that were still active, and with no unwanted intrusions on the fight and a fallen star piercing the 2 bastards, I took the victory I deserved. With our first mechanical boss defeated, more enemies were added to the forecast, including the red devils which I got a fire feather from. Watching these recordings back, it really feels like I have Dreams Luck mods activated, but the only mods I had on were a few quality of life mods, Fargo's mutant mod, and of course the enemy rain mod by First Fractal, which made the entire video possible. Since we're talking about videos though, you could like this one and subscribe to the channel for more, but I mean, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I waited for nightfall and summoned Skeletron Prime, who despite taking about 5 minutes to kill because he just kept moving and I'm terrible at aiming, was soon turned into nothing but a minecart that I didn't use a single time this 10-hour playthrough. I got the notification that the jungle is growing restless, as I'm sure most of you do too at the thought of the next boss on the list, Plantera. I crafted turtle armor with the turtle shells I had gathered through the past few hours and began blowing up the beautiful wilderness of the jungle, also that I could kill the mystical living plant in our own home. But while working on the arena, I accidentally summoned Plantera a little bit early and was downright gobbled by our second phase. I wasn't going to take that without fighting back though, so I finished the arena properly this time, and with a flamethrower, which was a surprisingly good weapon that I swear used to be significantly worse, I turned her into nothing but a houseplant. Pleased as I was with my win against Plantera, it was now time to open Pandora's box, turning off progression mode. From this point forward, anything can rain down on me. From butterflies to the Moonlord to random NPCs to the Dungeon Guardian, anything was possible. My luck had been honestly quite incredible thus far, but it was inevitable that things were going to change. At this point in the run, I was genuinely terrified of returning to the surface, knowing that the Empress of Light or Duke Fishron could now drop from the sky. So I delved deeper into the jungle, arriving at the Golem's postcode which I happened to know from memory, and burned him to a charred piece of rubble without breaking a sweat. I did try to kill him again, but I mustn't have been looking at the screen because I got hit by just about everything he shot at me and died a sad, sad death, sending me back to the surface in horror. Wanting to get away to a safer land, I drank a teleportation potion, but being dropped into a deli freezer wasn't ideal, so I decided to just brave the storm and Plantera came back for revenge. Yeah, no, okay, that's fair enough. To progress further into this offline day of a playthrough, I'd need to defeat the lunatic cultist. But after beginning to make my way over to the dungeon, a natural solar eclipse occurred, and not only that, but I got drive-by by Skeletron Prime and brought upon the end of the world. Trying to clear the Martian Madness event during a solar eclipse with random enemies falling from the sky wasn't the easiest nor the most enjoyable task of all time, but I, with no respect for myself or my own time, got through it despite the amount of times I was reduced to tears by the Martian saucers. But the Martians weren't the worst thing here. During the event, my worst nightmare was realized. The lunar pillars can, in fact, fall from the sky, bringing their respective enemies with them. This wasn't a huge problem for now, but things can only get worse. It's time for the Lunatic Cultist, the quote-unquote easiest boss in Terraria, so enough complaining. This fight is very simple in vanilla Terraria, so this shouldn't be... Stardust, Cells, and Goblin Sorcerers? Really? I couldn't even catch my breath. The dickhead cultist fell from the sky immediately after I respawned, and brought his mother with him, claiming that I'd been targeting him in Mario Kart. With a surprise encounter with Deerclops, I visited the cultist. Oh, it's another pillar! Yay! As I was saying, I visited the cultist and had a decent attempt going with a chunk of his health being removed, but Skeletron had reconstructed himself and took his revenge too. That makes 3. That also makes 3 lunar pillars. Give it up, everybody. This is the second time we've seen the Nebula pillar without having even defeated the cultist. Last attempt, the cultist brought in the Empress of Light for backup. How did the next attempt go, you might wonder? Well, we got to the Moonlord. We can end the run now, right? You know, I really wish we could, but we still have to go through the joys of the lunar invasion first. So I went back to the cultist after another pillar fell on me, and finally got to have a peaceful fight against him, which took 6 minutes with only a Queen Bee interruption. The only bosses I hadn't defeated, besides the Moonlord, were the Empress of Light, the Empress of Light, and Duke Fishron. I wasn't going for an all-boss run, but hey, if it happens, it happens. We are finally onto the Celestial Invasion, everybody's favorite part of Terraria and my favorite part of every video to completely skip, with this being no exception. Okay, no, I'm breaking off the script here, getting some live commentary. The Celestial Invasion was genuinely the single most mind-numbing thing I've ever had to go through in a video game. To give you a quick rundown of what happened, basically every single time I went to go anywhere in my world, another pillar would follow me. Most of the time the pillars didn't have shields, so it wasn't too bad, but sometimes they would spawn with a full shield and I had to kill another 100 enemies to get rid of it. I ended up giving up entirely on finishing the event properly, so I just crafted a bunch of celestial sigils from the pillars I had previously disintegrated, and summoned the Moonlord instead of waiting for him to fall from the sky. The Moonlord is honestly a lot more difficult in vanilla Terraria than he is in Calamity, which is what I'm used to. This is due to the True Eyes having their own little lasers, which essentially set quarantine regulations in place, keeping me as far away from the Moonlord as possible to avoid them. For that to even come into effect though, I need to actually get to his second phase, which is easier said than done in a small world where jumping just a little too high sends you floating off into outer space. I tried to spawn him in again, only to realize that the entire cult had reformed right above my house. As most people would, I murdered all of them to bait out their leader and then ran away like a little bitch. The next attempt against the Moonlord ended a little prematurely with the Dungeon Guardian coming around for a visit, and the third I just completely threw as a result of me having been playing Terraria for about 7 hours and a half straight by this point. Thankfully, with the help of the Brain of Confusion, I survived into the second phase where, thanks to it again, I survived this terrible play I made of teleporting back to my bunker, thinking I'd be able to escape the Moonlord at the edge of the world. This fight was a sign from God that it was time to stop playing one way or another with the amount of dodges I'd been given. But as the Moonlord's health lowered, my heart rate increased, and just as I was about to have a heart attack, he was dead. My fans even showed up to celebrate with me, but they got a little too excited and killed me in a stampede. If you have any ideas for other terrible playthroughs I can do, be sure to leave them in the comments, Calamity or Vanilla. I mean, who knows, maybe the next time I play this game I'll be on laxatives, having a race against the clock and my bowels to finish the game before bad things happen. Either way, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.